Make your next move with American Express Business Platinum. You'll get 5 times membership rewards points on flights and prepaid hotels booked on AmexTravel.com. Plus, enjoy access to the American Express Global Lounge Collection. And with the welcome offer of 150,000 points, your business can soar to all new heights. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-platinum. Amex Business Platinum. Built for business by American Express.
Hey, Atlanta. Say hello to Small Business Help from Apple. That's right. We're here to make starting and running your business simpler. From helping you choose the right devices to setting them up hassle-free, we can help you build your business in no time. Speak to a business expert and get the help you need at no cost whatsoever. At Apple, we're open for your small business. Go to apple.com/small business or visit an Apple store to learn more.
It's sort of like the big chill, but covered up in a sense of foreboding and threat. You don't know if there's one killer, is there several, is it going to be a complete massacre, are there going to be supernatural elements? So it kind of constantly keeps you guessing.
It absolutely blew me away because I just didn't know what it was or what was going to happen from one minute to the next. Everything is not quite as it seems, and he is increasingly paranoid that there is something dangerous afoot, and it gets more and more terrifying as it goes on.
You can really feel that there's secret intentions going on behind this dinner party. This is not just a fun reunion.
Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of Flixwatcher podcast. I'm joined by Mike.
Hello.
Anna.
Hi.
And Helen.
Hello.
And we're going to be talking about Karen Kusama's film, The Invitation.
Thank you as always to the mighty people for their mighty, mighty tunes. And thanks to Ben from Rockwood Audio for his awesome editing skills.
Please do remember to write a review and rate us on Apple Podcasts and anywhere you can do where you listen to the podcast, because it really does help us.
And you can join in the conversation with us on Twitter
at FlixWatcherPod and on Instagram
at Flixwatcher. Hello and welcome to this episode of Flixwatcher podcast. Joining us today remotely we have Mike and Anna. If you would like to say hello and tell our listeners a little bit more about who you are and what you do, please.
So, my name's Mike. I am a video and TV producer, and I'm also a producer and host of the Evolution of Horror podcast. So I currently produce the BBC Inside Cinema strand. That's my day job, which I love, which is essentially little short videos every week on BBC iPlayer about film and about cinema, which is great fun. And it means I get to do it safely in isolation at home with no danger there. So I'm very lucky.
So you don't need to like shake anyone's hand to do this job.
Not at all.
Babies.
I am living the lockdown dream right now. Yeah, I'm one of the lucky ones, definitely.
Were you in lockdown beforehand anyway, or were you actually going into an office to do this?
Do you know what? We did it in an office, but I always thought I could easily just do it at home, you know? So, not that I don't love being working with colleagues, but, you know, this works just as well. So, yeah, again, very lucky.
I know some people who do the continuity announcements in between shows, and I think they're on I think they're on BBC One, and they wanted to go to BBC Four because BBC Four is all pre-recorded, whereas the BBC One you have to do it live, you have to actually go into the building to do it. But then they moved to BBC Four, which meant they could just pre-record everything. Just wake up one morning, do all the links, upload it to Dropbox or whatever the BBC uses, and then that's their job done. And I thought that sounds great. You get paid the same money apparently, so why wouldn't you?
That's the dream, isn't it? Exactly. That is the dream. Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty nice. Although, you know, this weekend it's been so sunny, the weekend we're recording this, and that is the only problem, isn't it, with this current situation, is I would love to be out in some sun at some point.
Oh, well, hopefully. Well, you've got your one exercise a day.
That's it.
Mandated. Yeah. Who are you, good lady?
Hi, I'm Anna. I'm a freelance film programmer, film writer, and podcaster. I run a film festival called Underwire Festival, and I co-founded the horror film collective The Final Girls, which is also a podcast that I host and produce. And I also do another horror-themed podcast, which is an American Horror Story rewatch podcast that I host with Clarice Lockery.
Clarice, who's been on this podcast before. So tell us about American Horror Story. Is that still on Netflix?
It is still on Netflix. The 10th series is coming out hopefully this year. Hopefully, it's not delayed. And our podcast is called The Next Supremes, and it's essentially in this lockdown moment, it is comfort viewing. It's, going back to something I've watched over and over again that's equal parts horrific and very campy, and has some of my favorite performers ever, and is endlessly quotable and just really fun to dig into a little bit.
Well, yeah, I should. It's one of the few TV shows I've not even tried watching yet. So maybe when there's a bit more time, which is now, I'll get around to watching it. Helen, have you seen American Horror Story?
No, I haven't. I mean, I'm notoriously bad with watching TV programs anyway, so it's not one that I've yet gone into. Maybe when I finish ER for the 5th time, I'll look at getting some new ones.
So we're here talking today about The Invitation, which is your choice, Mike.
Yes.
Can you tell us, first of all, why you chose it and give us a synopsis in 1 minute or less?
I love The Invitation. So I'm a horror fan from my whole life, really, a lifelong horror fan, hence why I do a horror podcast. And I love watching movies that completely surprise me and movies that I know nothing about. And I think this movie in particular is a really good one to watch right now. It's a good one to watch at home, I think. And I think I first discovered it possibly on Netflix. I watched it on a small screen and it absolutely blew me away because I just didn't know what it was or what was going to happen from 1 minute to the next. So the story, very briefly, is a guy played by Logan Marshall Green gets an invitation to a dinner party. It's his ex-wife and her new husband. They turn up at this dinner party, but everything is not quite as it seems, and he is increasingly paranoid that there is something dangerous afoot at this dinner party. And it gets more and more terrifying as it goes on.
So did you not foresee anything that was happening, what was going to happen in the film, in the story?
What I love about it is that it took me by surprise at every turn. So I obviously watched it knowing it was some kind of horror or thriller, but it's such a slow burn and it's so deliberately paced and it takes its time with just being stuck in this very awkward situation with these characters. And it's kind of horrific from the start, but not in a classic horror kind of way. But I found myself becoming more and more gripped just by watching this awkward interactions between all of our sort of characters in this dinner party. And then, of course, as stuff starts to ramp up and it becomes increasingly sort of classic horror, it just gets more and more terrifying. And I love the way that it takes its time and never quite shows its hand until the very, very, very final act, sort of the last 10, 15 minutes. I love that. I love films that do that. And it really did take me by surprise, yeah.
It seemed kind of sure-footed with with the plan. They seemed to know exactly what it was going to do, and as you said, it kind of stuck to that. So when I had no idea where it was going, and I knew it was horror-ish, and I guess it sets the premise quite well because everything you can just sense right from the start, nothing's quite right, and by the fact they kill a coyote right at the start, it's kind of like, okay, this is already on.
It's like a bad sort of harbinger from the start, isn't it? At that moment when he has to kill the coyote, it's like, oh no, this is going to end badly. Yeah.
In my notes, I put that it's never a good start if you run something over. So.
In Get Out, did they run something over?
Yeah, they did.
I don't remember that right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's got a very, very similar kind of setup to Get Out in some ways, hasn't it? This kind of like this awkward to meet. It's like going to meet the in-laws, going to meet the ex and their new family, and it's that same kind of build-up of dread of like what's really going on here and increasing paranoia. I love it.
So going to a bougie house in the mountains, it's never a good plan.
Never good.
Yeah. I think I watched this film for the first time also on a small screen. I can't remember exactly when or where. I think it was a little while after it was released because it had one of those blink and you miss it releases in cinemas in the UK. And I was already a big admirer of Karen Kusama, the director, from the previous work that she's done. And this sort of flew under the radar
Such
and
as
then
what?
suddenly appear. Well, she did Girl Fight, which was her first film, which won her a big prize at Sundance. And then she did Jennifer's Body as well, which was also written by Diablo Cody, which I think is really underrated as a kind of as a zombie monster film in its own right. But in any case, I kind of knew who she was, but I knew nothing about the film. And just like Mike said, it had such tinges of familiar situations, familiar characters, familiar tropes from thrillers, from whodunits, from horror films. It's all set in one location. You can tell that everybody has tense past relationships. It's sort of like The Big Chill, but covered up in a sense of foreboding and threat. And you can't quite put your finger on what is or who is the threatening force in there, but you can feel it. And as stuff starts to ramp up in the second half of the film, you're kind of just completely going with it, and you don't know what really is happening. You don't know who, is there's one killer, is there several, is it going to be a complete massacre, are there going to be supernatural elements? So it kind of constantly keeps you guessing. And even as I was rewatching it still kept me guessing and was still so thrilling, but also repressive, because it's in this big bougie fancy house and you just feel the weight of the history of it, the history of the characters between one another, and the pressure of not really knowing what the secret plan is behind this whole encounter, because you can really feel that there's secret intentions going on behind this dinner party. This is not just a fun reunion.
Helen, well, you're all three of you guys are horror fans. By the way, you guys have two horror podcasts, and I know Helen's a horror nerd. What were your thoughts on this, Helen?
Yeah, so I hadn't seen this one, but it had been on my watch list for a while. It's been recommended to me. So when you picked it, I was like, yes, I do finally get to watch that. And yeah, I didn't really know that much about it, which I think is definitely the best way to go into it. And yeah, I thought it was brilliant. I just love the feeling of dread that you get. And there's this perfect moment in it where it's the right amount of paranoia that almost makes you think, actually, is he just imagining things? Is it not really as worse as it could be? And you start to question that yourself, and then it flips everything and you're like, oh yes, here is the crazy. And it comes at you really like in the best way possible. And I also like that it doesn't overextend kind of its moment. It's really sort of sharp and punchy, and you're sort of dealing with so this is what it is. Oh my God, it's happening. It's in your face. It's happening. Oh, it's over. Not that it stretches out for ever and ever. And sort of the main guy, Will, who I know as Discount Tom Hardy, is really, really good in this. Like, he is a man who has got a lot going on, and you can just feel like he's so overconsumed with grief, and because you don't really know what went on, but it's something really, really awful, and you just sort of feel all of that through him. So it's actually a really good performance from him.
Yeah, I like the way the story unfolded between him and his ex-wife as to why they split up, and it wasn't super explicit, but it just kept, you could see there's tension right from the start, but also there was still kind of a love there. But and when they had that reveal, I thought it was done really well. And I liked how there's just lots and lots of little things seeded through, like not locking the doors behind people. And first seeing that character when she was just kind of in the hallway and she's bottomless. Where's this guy that's not turned up? All these kind of things like kind of brought back and becomes more and more. The barbiturates in her bedroom. Will just walking around at he's in their old house, but also he feels very unfamiliar with it. And then they bring that screen up and show this person just dying, and everyone, and there's four kind of random characters: Will's ex-wife and her husband. There's that guy and I can't remember the lady's name. They're all like, "Isn't that just a beautiful thing?" And everyone's like, "Is it? Did we just see someone die? And what is this exactly? Why are we here?" And then it just kind of ramps up a bit, but there's still a lot of tension there. Yeah, it's good fun.
It taps into about 6 of my fears, really. It's like this fear of kind of enclosed spaces because they're trapped in this house. It's also about cults, and cults absolutely scare the shit out of me. These kind of like very like Mansonite type people. And, you know, fear of really awkward dinner parties that you cannot get out from as well. Like there is a lot to be truly terrified of in this film. And, you know, whatever your hang-ups are or your neurosis is, I think this film like sort of taps into really different little areas of kind of the horror of real life before it gets into the kind of genre horror as well at the end. But you're right, like the way it's kind of seeded throughout, like why is this guy locking the door and why are these other 2 people invited, and you know what's going on, why is that woman like wearing no clothes in the other room, and you know why are they lighting that red lantern in the garden, and there's all these like little creepy things that keep happening that just slowly kind of builds and builds. And yeah, you're right, you know, the fact that this main character he's a guy that's grieving, he's going through something, and so he's kind of a bit of an unreliable narrator. So is it all in his head? Is he paranoid? And again, I think the first time I watched it, that really kept me guessing all the way. And they really push it. You know, every time he thinks he's discovered something, then it's not what he thinks. So, you know, when he thinks the friend's boyfriend turned up earlier, Choi, and so therefore something must be wrong. And then he turns up at the house anyway, and it keeps doing that where it pushes you and then pulls it back. I love it. I think it's really masterfully directed by Karen Kusama.
But then he does know because he like says, "Don't drink the wine."
Yeah.
And Choi's girlfriend does, and she's the only one that dies. And suddenly there's a gun that appears from nowhere. You're just like, well, okay, I don't know anymore. This is
God.
Things escalate fast.
Yeah, even that moment is amazing. You know, when he knocks the wine, you think that's it, and then he accidentally knocks that girl out, and then so suddenly all the drama turns to that, and then you suddenly go, oh, maybe he was paranoid, maybe he's freaked out. Oh no, now he's accidentally killed somebody. But then you see that the girl has actually been poisoned at the dinner table, and it's like, you know, it's so clever. Yeah,
it was proper. Yeah, so talk about the cult aspect, because it was a bit Brian Jonestown Massacre with the drinking the Kool-Aid, involuntarily in this case. But for me, it was a lot of kind of Manson family thing of stuff going awry in a house, although, you know, from a slightly different angle. What were your thoughts on what you said about cults? But you and Anna and Helen, are cults something that you're wary of in film or just in life in general?
Oh, I love cults.
I mean, I tend not to hang out with them.
I wouldn't say that
life.
I hang out with cults, but it's something that has always been an object of fascination for me. And you're totally right. There's so many. I think it sort of selects different recognizable totems of what makes a cult. You know, like the creepy lady who's naked for no reason, or overly sexual and touchy-feely, all the new age language, random dude with a weird druidic name. His name is Pruitt in the film, that shows up and sort of has too much of a good vibes thing going on that really puts everybody off, and kind of shares way too much about his own life that is extremely dramatic and intense, and with people that he does not know from Adam. The kind of the spiked wine, which obviously reminds of the Kool-Aid incident. Even I particularly love Michelle Huisman, who plays the new husband of Eden, the lead character, Will's ex-wife. He also plays another cult leader in this great film called The Other Lamb, which was released last year at some point. It's within the last year. And he's got this really intense, quiet charisma, but he's also a little bit too charming. He's always veering on the creepy side of things. And that figure of the charismatic cult leader, I think, is also very important in the film, because he instantly draws people into him, but there's something off about him. And you never quite know whether it's this tension between Will and him because of the relationship that they have with the same woman, the fact that Will is the ex-husband and this guy is the new husband, or whether it's something more nefarious. And I love the point that Mike made earlier of the fact that you never quite know whether Will is just a little bit unreliable, a little bit too damaged or too depressed, or maybe overly sensitive given the situation. Like even from the moment go, he is presented as being way too sensitive and seeing things that might not be there, that might just be his own baggage that he's bringing with him. But then, he's right in certain parts of the story, at least.
Well, my favourite film from last year was Midsummer, which there's kind of a lot of similarities between this. Obviously, no spoilers, but just from kind of the grief aspect, it's quite a place to come from when you're making a film, and both really, really prevalent in this. So yeah, when I was watching it, there a lot of similarities with that and Midsummer.
So I've not seen Midsummer. That's presented as a cult in the trailers, at least. Is that fair?
Pretty fair to say.
Pretty fair to say. And I think like those are mostly my favourite types of horror movies. These, I guess, The Wicker Man is a bit like this too, and Rosemary's Baby to a point as well, where you've got this paranoid central character who thinks there is a group of people out there to get them or are planning something, but you never quite know. They never quite show their hand until the very end of the film. I love these types of movies that rely more on dread and paranoia than anything else,
But it is obviously talked about the Manson family, talks about the Jonestown massacre. There's the one in Texas, but yeah, these things do happen. So it's a real threat. It's a real threat. So I can understand why that is a thing where just all these people are suddenly happy clappy and in the same lingo and in the same vibe, and like
it's the conviction as well. It's the concept that they believe what they're doing is right, so there's no reasoning with them, because they think what they're doing is, for whatever bonkers reason, they think what they're doing is good in some way and righteous, and yeah, that somehow makes it all the more terrifying, I think. I
was going to say, but you do get that from his wife, that you kind of sense that she genuinely believed that this was kind of like the solution and how to kind of absolve her of her grief and to make things better. So that's kind of like even scarier, that she has kind of bought into this and, is, quite prepared to kill her ex-husband and what they consider their nearest and dearest friends to kind of get over the death of their son, which is terrifying in itself.
Absolutely. I think this entire film is an exploration of grief. Both Will and Eden are trying still to process probably one of the most painful experiences that a human being can go through, the death of a child. And they're clearly dealing with it in very different ways, extremely different ones. And Eden's choice of kind of engaging with this cult, who we never really learned too much about. It's all kind of piecemeal, and we just get little hints and nods as to what they're really selling. But one of the main things that's really striking on a really basic human level about the invitation, and is really terrifying, is the fact that in order to just get over or accept her grief and the sense of guilt that they both seem to have over the death of their child, is to completely forget about it, is to try to eliminate it in some way at whatever cost. And that obsessive faith and that kind of dedication to this cult that's offering her that escape is really sad, and it's really terrifying. It's terrifying when you first watch it, and then if you rewatch the film, it actually gains this whole nother level of just deep sadness, because you can see, and I think it's very much down to the performances as well, beneath the crazed, glazed eyes that she's giving, there's a real sadness there of someone who's just really desperately trying to get rid of the pain that they're going through. And one of the kind of most amazing scenes for me was when Will kind of confronts her and says to not deny the things that happened. But that seems to be kind of the main selling point of the cult anyway, to get people to get rid of the really painful stuff that they might have done or that they've been through, via murdering their friends, I guess.
Before we go to the big kind of the final kind of 15 minutes, what do you think happened to the lady who had the wherewithal to say, no, this is too strange for me, I'm going to go?
I hope she's safe.
I know, but the problem is that, and we'll get into this when we talk about the end, but there's that sudden realization, of course, that it's not just this house; it's the whole neighborhood. It's several, however many houses. So I can't help but think that maybe something happened to her after she left in that car.
I think Purritt killed her then and there.
Yeah, maybe.
Claire's dead.
Because Will's because Will was watchingly over, and then one of the friends kind of sideswipes him. I can't remember which person it was. Just as Purritt kind of goes around the corner, and you don't see then. I think he just
And
don't kill my hope, Kobe.
And
I just need to be realistic.
And it's like Anna said, like this film has actually got amazing rewatchability, I think, as well. Because even though it is this mystery, it's so clever. Like when you watch it again, kind of like with Rosemary's Baby and movies like that, you can kind of see the cogs behind the scenes. Like you know what they're doing and why at different points throughout the night. And I love that as well. I think that everything is very sort of carefully staged and carefully placed.
Okay, the final 15 minutes. Was it too much, or was it just like perfect for you? Is that the right press relief, do you reckon, for the situation?
Absolutely perfect. It was so good. I felt like by that point we'd really earned it. Like we were ready for this gruesome, this proper, felt like a home invasion horror film suddenly in that last 15 minutes. And it's violent and it's nasty and it's tense. I love it. I think it's well and truly earned. And then the last shot is one of the scariest shots in horror. I love it.
Helen was nodding her head vehemently there.
Yeah, it's really good because everything comes so fast and it is just really, really tense. And you've gone that far with not really knowing what's going to come next, that literally anything could happen. And yeah, the final shot is the kind of realization that it isn't just kind of a revenge sort of dinner party thing. It's much bigger. You know, this kind of thing has been planned on a wide scale. And it's one of those like crushingly devastating endings that are quite rare, but when they come along and they're done really well, they're really, really satisfying.
I think the film really earns that. I love that sentence, the crushingly devastating ending that it gives us, because it really, you almost feel a sense of relief when they get out, and then it just all completely comes crushing down on you, and it becomes so much more terrifying. And I love it. It's like the ending of Fight Club. It's one of the most perfect endings I've seen in movies.
Because it does really turn on a sixpence, because as Will rightly said, accidentally Will knocks out that girl, so you focus on her, then it's back to their friend who's like foaming at the mouth and presumably dead, and then there's a gunshot. So all that's happened within the space of like 1 minute, and he's suddenly like, what? Hold on, did I just what happened there? And then it just goes even further from there. It becomes almost, it's people being thrown through windows and stabbed through the heart and things like that. And it's a very, very, very sharp turn for the worse, I think.
I mean, I've heard some negative takes on this film. I've heard some horror fans that say they just kind of found it too slow and dull, which baffles me. But for some people, it takes too long to get to that genre thrill, maybe, that for so much of the film, you're just sitting watching a dinner party play out. But I think the last 15 minutes are as brilliant as the first hour and 30 minutes, to be honest. Like, I think it all works so well.
I'm Sam Clements, host of the 90 Minutes or Less Film Festival, another podcast in the Stripped Media family, a podcast that celebrates movies under 90 minutes long. Each episode, I'm joined by a special guest who selects a movie to join our prestigious lineup. Past guests have come from the worlds of film, television, music, food, comedy, and podcasting. Search for us now on the app you're currently listening to this podcast, or join us at 90minfilmfest.com.
Okay, should we head to the scores, guys?
Your neighborhood just got cooler with Kroger Delivery's refrigerated trucks. Simply order groceries at the same great prices online as in-store, and we'll bring them to you fresh every time. And if that wasn't cool enough, you can now earn 4 times the fuel points after 4 with your digital coupon. Choose a next-day Kroger Delivery time slot for 4 p.m. or later on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Must deliver by February 4th. Restrictions apply. See Kroger.com for details.
So these are the Flixwatcher scoring system. All of the sections are scored out of 5, and you may have decimal places if you wish. And we will start with you, Mike, with the recommendability, please.
Okay, recommendability out of 5.
Yes, please.
I mean, absolute 5.
Oh, okay.
Of course, yeah.
Have you recommended to someone and they've come back to you with, dude, what are you doing?
Okay, that's true. Yeah, I have had that happen. I guess. So recommendability
Block
is this.
those people, Mike.
I know. So I suppose. Okay. I'll lower it to a 4 because I suppose.
No, keep it 5.
I'm just 5. Yeah.
What I would say is that it needs a. I guess I always recommend it to people, but with a caveat that maybe it's not going to be like watching Scream or something, like you've got to, I guess in some ways you've got to know what you're in for, but yeah, I would recommend it to absolutely everybody. Yeah.
Anna?
Absolute Stone Cold 5. 100%. I would definitely recommend it to everyone. And I would particularly recommend it to people who might not identify as horror fans and who might be wary of the genre, because I think this is a really good mix of horror, thriller, and kind of a very classic whodunit.
Helen?
So I'm going to go for 4.8 because there are people who this will be too slow and they just won't buy into it enough to enjoy it properly. And, I think that out of all the genres, probably like maybe horror and westerns are kind of the hardest sell sometimes to people who aren't really fans.
More than musicals?
Maybe put musicals in there as well.
I'm going to go for a 4.5 here. As a horror person, non-horror fan, this is a good example of, I think, what they could be. And I wouldn't put this as traditional horror. And I think I agree with Anna. It's more like for me, it's more like a psychological thriller thing going on here. And you you're trying to unpick the pieces. And then when it does turn full horror, then I think it's completely worth it. And I think recently, we've reviewed Get Out on here. We reviewed.
We've done quite a few horror.
Unfollow. What's the one?
Which one?
The Follow one. I can't remember.
It Follows.
It Follows. Yeah. And a good horror. I class as a horror film is The Guest as well. So I think there's a really good bunch of new horror films which are not of the standard, not cut from the same kind of cloth as 15, 20 years ago, which does make me reevaluate each time I say I'm not a big horror fan. I'm like, this is good.
I wanted to pull you up on this because every time we've had a horror recently, I'm not a horror fan.
Because they've been good.
But I quite like this, which makes me think you need to reevaluate whether you are a horror fan, because I think maybe previously you've just watched horror films that aren't very good, because I had a look at ones that we've reviewed, and I'm pretty sure Kobe said, I'm not a horror fan, but I enjoyed that. To nearly all of them that we've had. So maybe you just don't like bad horror films, and secretly you do really like horror films, and they've got a little space in your heart that you weren't quite sure was there for them.
I think what happens is people who say they're horror fans are very happy to watch shit horror films and recommend it to people, and I've got no time for that. And there's some like old school zombie films I'm just not even fussed about. I'm not bothered.
How dare you?
Zombies are great.
I think that's offensive. That's offensive to horror fans. How dare you?
You don't say this kind of thing around me and Anna.
You see, there you go. You see, there's people who like films who are good, which are good horror films, and they're good films and they happen to be horror. And there's people who will seek out horror films, and I'm not someone who will ever seek out a horror film. But I'll happily watch a film that has a horror as long as it's like good. If that makes sense.
Sure.
Repeat viewing score, Mike.
Repeat viewing is a 4.5. I think it's almost as brilliant second time round as first time round. I suppose you lose that little bit of mystery when you rewatch it. But other than that, there's so much other stuff to appreciate in different ways watching it a second time. Like I said, watching it knowing what the real intentions are and what's coming only adds to the dread for me. So, I absolutely love it. That would be a 4.5.
I'm going to go 5, mainly because, like Mike said, it's a film that once you know what happens in the end, rewatching it again another couple times just makes for such a different and much more layered viewing experience, I think, because then you can sort of start to see how everything is pieced together and the dynamics between the characters gain a whole nother layer as well. So I'd say 5.
So I've only seen this once, and I think, yeah, definitely I'd like to see it again. Maybe not immediately, but I think this could be one that I return to on a few times. And also, it's only 1 hour 40 as well, so it's quite a nippy sort of length. So I'm going to kind of give a generous 4 for this one for repeat viewing.
Yeah, I'm going to go for 3.5. I think it definitely needs rewatching, just so you can kind of track the paths of what's going on when Pruitt's first introduced and see what's going on between Eden and Will, kind of thing. You can draw those lines a bit more. So I think that's interesting to see, and also just check out Claire again, just see what, you know. I think she's dead. I think she died at Pruitt's hands just before he came back into the house. But I might watch that a bit more closely, and it'd be good to see how the things, now you know what's going to happen, where things are seeded more subtly than just locking the door and Will saying, "Why have you locked the door?" Because I think there must be a lot more other things that are going on that you don't really notice. So 3.5, because I wouldn't watch it that much, but I think I need to watch it again. Small screen score, Mike.
Small screen score 5, absolutely 5. This is the perfect film to watch on the small screen. It is a film about people in one place, mostly one room. It's a lot of close-ups on faces, which I think are ideal films to watch on a small screen. It's dialogue heavy, but it's also really tense. And, it's a film about the horror of being in somebody's home. So watch it in your home, and it only adds to that horror. Everything is great on a big screen, of course, but I think this is always my go-to when people want a recommendation for a good small screen horror film to watch that's streaming that they may not have heard of.
I'm going to be real boring here and just say 5, because just to echo everything that Mike was saying, I sadly missed it when it was released on the big screen. I would like to see it on the big screen, but I think it is perfect to watch at home because of the setting and because of how it's been directed, and because it seems it's very simple on the surface. Its depth and its layers and its complexities are all in the direction, which is really smart and really economical, and the relationships between the characters in the script, and it doesn't scream big screen. And like Mike was saying, if you're going to host a dinner party and organize a movie viewing party, then this is the one. And it will probably freak people out and they won't talk to you for a week, which, always recommended.
So I started watching this on the iPad for logistic reasons, and kept with it, and it was quite a claustrophobic and quite a great way to experience something very kind of close up, and it almost felt like I was almost like peering in to the house, having kind of like this, watching it on this little small screen, and I had a lovely time doing that, peering in. So yeah, I mean, with all horror, I do like going to watch horror at the cinema. I think it's a great experience, but the same as Mike and Anna have said, because you're kind of going to the home, and because the way it's shot so claustrophobic, it didn't detract anything from me. So I'll go with a 5 as well on it.
Yeah, I'm going to go for a 5 as well. I think it's very subtle in how it's shot and everything like that. I think Mike put a good point about it. Mainly on people's faces. The house looked amazing, but it wasn't about the house. And I think they chose a lot of the shots really carefully. I think if I'd gone to the cinema to see this, I don't think I would have got anything more out of it compared to when I saw that Invisible Man, where that was great to see at the cinema and seeing other people squirming. And I don't think this is a squirmy one. This is just like, oh wow, okay, that's taken a turn in a direction I didn't expect. So it kind of makes you sit up but it doesn't make you. I don't think there's that much of a collective experience from it. So I think 5 works for me. Engagement score. This is quite high already. 3.5 so far. Anna, engagement score out of 5.
Controversial, but I'm going to say a 4. Mainly because I think it's a film that if it doesn't grip you in the first 15, 20 minutes, you might give up on it because it is quite a slow burner. And if that's not something that you can engage with, or if you're impatient, or if you're just having kind of an impatient type of day, it might be difficult to give it the breathing space that it needs. But I'd say for anyone who's kind of in that mood, just be patient with it because it so earns its stay.
Helen?
Yeah, I understand what Anna's saying. I think that if you don't kind of get this in the first sort of 20 minutes, then you're probably going to give up, possibly. I'm not sure. But for me, just engaged all the way through. I just had no idea where it was going to go. And, it's an hour 40 minutes, ideal length. So a 5 from me for engagement.
Okay, I'm going to give this a 4 as well. I think you need to be engaged, and it's kind of at the start you're kind of where's this going? It's a bit weird, but it does pay off. So I can understand people kind of waning at the start. And I think I was playing around on where have I seen that guy before? And it ended up being Darian Harris, which is the main thing I got from that, my googling. But it does pay off at the end. So I do think. Yeah, 4. I think 4 is good. And that gives us a score of 4.64.
That's really high.
3.75. That's super high. It's a lot higher than I would have anticipated before coming into this recording. That's amazing. So we'll go to Twitter. Before we record, guys, we do put a shout out on Twitter and ask for people's opinions and thoughts and retweets, and say something like, in this occasion, we're reviewing The Invitation with Anna B. Demented and the movie Mike. Have you seen it? Give us your thoughts and a rating out of 5 stars. And we've got quite a few responses for this, which is always lovely. Mike, do you want to take the first one?
Yeah, okay, so this first reply is from Daisy Jane, and she says, I just watched this last night, brilliantly sinister slow burn. Would have liked to know a bit more about the you-know-what. Yeah, which I would agree with. It leaves you with a lot still lingering, but I love that about it.
Yeah. Anna, do you want to take the next one that's on your screen?
Sure. So Tasteless Podcast says, a solid 4. I really enjoyed how it built tension. I wasn't quite sure how things would go, and I've told many people to check it out. Logan Marshall Green really shines. I'd agree. Logan, aka Discount Tom Hardy, to be fair, does really shine. And he's also really good in Upgrade. I think he's building himself quite a really nice niche within genre as a kind of really reliable leading man.
Helen, do you want to say the next one on your screen?
So the next one I've got is from LJ Human at Luke Human. Watched this the same day I watched Parasite, and it has also stayed with me, which is a good sign. A really tight, tense drama that sustains enough mystery to be engaging right up until a well-paced and satisfying end. 4 stars.
Nice. I think Parasite's quite a nice thing to compare it to, well, House and Strange Things. We won't say no more about Parasite. Mike, do you want to take the next one that's on your screen?
Yeah, this one came from at Meg Writes Words. She said, loved it, 4 out of 5 stars. I thought it was a compelling exploration of grief and paranoia, plus solid horror. This quote from the director, Karen Kusama, really stood out to me. We culturally dismiss people who are paranoid, but the irony is we have a lot to be paranoid about. I love that quote. That's great.
Good one, that one.
Yeah. Paranoid about people delivering your Tesco delivery. Have they got the lurgy? Is there any more there? I think there's at least one more. Yeah, Anna? You want to say we're not ready yet?
The STST cast at STST cast says it was meh. The ending seemed very telegraphed. I mean, I'm sorry, you're wrong.
How dare they?
Yeah.
And Helen, there's one more.
Yep, so the last one is from The Countdown Pod. Greatly enjoyed this. Low budget but tense film with an excellent payoff. Logan Marshall Green aka Tom Hardley, like what you did there, is very good. 4 stars.
Nice. Anna and Mike, can you just sign off by letting people know where we can find you online and remind them of the names of your podcast, and then we'll all say goodbye.
Yeah. So my name's Mike. You can find me on Twitter at The Movie Mike, and my podcast, Evolution of Horror. You can find that on Twitter at Evolution Pod and all the places where you'd normally get your podcasts.
I'm Anna. You can find me on Twitter at Anna Be Demented, and I host the podcast The Final Girls and The Next Supremes, both of which you can find everywhere where you get your podcasts.
Okay, thank you very much, guys. Bye.
Thanks.
Enjoyed this episode of Flixwatcher podcast? Why not leave us a 5-star review on iTunes? You can also follow us at FlixWatcherPod on Twitter, and we're at FlixWatcher on Instagram. Thanks as always to the mighty people for their mighty tunes, and Ben from Rockwood Audio for his awesome editing skills. If you're looking to get your podcast edited as sweet as this, get in touch with Ben, and that's Rockwood, ROKK Wood Audio. Tell him Flixwatcher sent you.
You just heard a Stripped Media production.